Alrighty, so we're ready to jump into the styling. We're going to do some general styling as well as trying to finish styling the calculator display in this video. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go to a background called UI Gradients. Can zoom in a little more here. And this is a great resource where you can find a lot of different types of gradients. If I click on this, you can see that there's a lot of different options and I can even filter them by colors. I'm just going to pick this one here that I like. And if we click on the Get CSS button, I'm actually just going to copy this part here. And I don't need the commented part. I'm just going to copy this. And we can get rid of that. And if we jump back to our code, into our CSS, into our body, we can paste that in there and save. And if we jump back to our project, we can see that we have a very nice gradient here. But the one thing I'm noticing is on the screen recording itself, the gradient is not very smooth, not as it is when I'm actually looking at it. So for now, I'm going to turn it off, but I will turn the gradient back on later. But for now, let's jump back to the code, and below this, or we can comment this out and then add another background. This one will just be white smoke. So this is slightly off-white color. Save that and check it out. You can see it's slightly grayer than the browser up here. Okay, so we'll live with that for now, but it is cool to be able to add gradients to projects, and I thought this was a good one to throw it in. So feel free to add these in any other project you might have, and keep in mind they will look better than they do on this screen recording. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we want to center everything vertically and horizontally on the page. So we'll jump back and take care of that. And right below our min height, we're going to give it a display flex, and then justify. You can see it's auto-completing for me if I press enter. And then I want to also center it. So justify content center, centers on the horizontal axis. And then we're going to add one more align items center. I pressed enter there again. This is going to align on the vertical axis. So if we save this and jump back, we can see that everything is now centered in our page. Perfect. Now we're ready to start making the container for our calculator itself. So we're going to jump back, and below our body here, we are going to set the properties for our calculator class. So calculator, curly brackets, and we want this background to be white so that it'll pop against our white smoke background. We're going to give it a min width of 400 pixels. So this will be the width on a desktop, but we want it to be able to be bigger than that if it needs to be on a mobile device. And next, we are going to do two things that I think will make it look very modern. The first is we're going to give it a border radius of 12 pixels. This will give it nice rounded corners. And then the next thing is box shadow, which you might have heard me talk about on other projects. So this is going to give it a nice shadow all the way around to make it look like the calculator is actually kind of floating on top of the background. So the first value is the horizontal offset. This is the left and right shadow. We're going to set that to 0. Next, we're going to set the vertical offset to 5 pixels. So that'll be 5 pixels down below the bottom. Next, we're going to set the spread to 30 pixels. So if we set this spread to 0, it would be a solid color of 5 pixels, solid kind of border. But with 30 pixels, it means it gets more and more feathered. And lastly, we have the blur. So we're going to set a negative value here of -5 pixels. So that'll make sure that the blur is very subtle. And lastly, we're going to set the color. So we're going to use an RGBA value. And if we press enter, you see that kind of populates for us. So we're going to type 0 tab 0 tab 0 to give it a black color, and then tab again. And our alpha here is going to be 0.6. So that's 0.6 opacity, 60% opacity. And we can save that now and check it out. Okay, so you can see that we have a nice subtle shadow around our container. See, we have our nice rounded corners here. All right, that's looking good. Now we're going to start focusing on our display itself at the top here. Okay, so let's jump back and we're going to scroll down here and we're going to target our calculator dash display. And we're going to start by giving it a background black and a color of white. So we want the numbers to be white and the background to be black. We're going to give it a margin of 0. And we're also going to use Flexbox here. So display flex. And we want to align the items vertically. So we're going to use align item center. And then this time our justify content, instead of center, we're going to use flex dash end. So this will send our numbers to be right aligned instead of center aligned. So let's save that and check it out. Okay, so I would say that's definitely an improvement, but we still need some styling on our H1 itself. We're going to want some padding so it's not right at the edge here. And I think we can also pick a better font than the standard font here. We can even maybe make the font bigger as well. So let's jump back and take care of that. So we're going to scroll down again. And this time we're going to call the calculator display space and then H1. So this is going to target the H1 that is a child of calculator display. And we're going to start by giving this a margin of 0 as well, just to make sure. H1s usually have pretty significant margins. And we're going to give it back a padding of 25 pixels. So the padding is good because we will still have our background color. If we had a margin, it would actually space it out and not give us the background color. It would just give us a blank color instead. And we're going to make the font size bigger. Let's make it 45 pixels. And the font itself, so font dash family, I'm actually going to select a font that I know is on both Mac and Windows by default. So I'm going to use single quotes and I'm going to type Lucida console and then comma and then sans dash serif as a backup. And I also want to make the font weight as light as possible. So I'm going to give it a font weight of 100. So let's save that and check it out. All right, so I would say that that's looking a lot better than it was before. One other thing I would like to change though is rounding the corners on the top here. So the top right and the top left, but I want to maintain no corners, no border radius on the bottom left and the bottom right. So let's jump back and take care of that. We're actually going to do this in our calculator display itself. And we're going to give this a border dash radius. And we're going to give it 4 values here. So we want 10 pixels on the top left, 10 pixels on the top right, and then 0 border radius on the bottom left and 0 border radius on the bottom right. So we can save that, jump back, and perfect. We can see that we have this rounded, and these two corners are not rounded. Excellent. So we have one other problem that we can solve in our styling here. So what would happen if we had a really, really long number? So let's go back to our HTML, and we're just going to give this a bunch more numbers, and then save, jump back. Okay, so I actually made a bit of a mistake in the CSS. We don't want this to be able to expand to any width because we want our numbers to stay at a certain width, not just keep expanding. So we can jump back to our CSS, and we're actually going to change the min width just to be a width value. So we can save that now. And you can see now that the numbers are going outside of the calculator. So we can fix this by adding in a scroll bar. So if we go back to our code here, we're going to need to add in an overflow X auto in our H1. So down here, we're going to add in overflow -X. So this is the horizontal overflow. And we want this to be set explicitly to auto, meaning that it will give a scroll bar if necessary, and if not, it will not have one. So if we save that and jump back, we can see now that we have a scroll bar here. So that looks great on Mac, but I don't know if you've seen Windows scroll bars lately, and to me, they are not that good looking. So we want to be able to add a custom scroll bar in here. So in order to accomplish that, we can go to this resource here on custom scroll bars. And if we scroll down, we can see that there's an example here. So we can use custom scroll bars on WebKit browsers. So that is Chrome, Safari, and Opera. And I believe now Edge, because Edge is built with Chrome's underlying technology. And we can actually just copy this example here. So you can see that we're changing the width, the scroll bar track, the scroll bar thumb, and also it changes color when we hover over it. So let's copy that and jump back. And right below here, we're going to comment out a title. This is going to be for our custom scroll bar. And we'll paste that in. And we can actually get rid of these other comments. And let's actually comment out something for our display as well, just to show different sections here. Okay, so let's save that now and check it out. And you can see that if we refresh, we now have this custom scroll bar here that will look the same on any operating system. All right, very nice. So that's pretty much it for our calculator display. In the next one, we will start looking at our CSS grid so that we can align our buttons correctly. I'll see you in that one. Bye for now.